What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sikora Success this Friday, November 19th. Today we have Jaison Joseph coming back on, and people have been asking, what are some problematic transactions that we've had, how we can help the agents get through those. And so I was like, Jaison, who's not only on the staff side of things with me, he actually was selling quite a bit of homes when he first came into the organization. And I was asking him about, what was one problematic transaction that, you may have had that you feel like an agent could benefit from knowing a little bit, on how to navigate that. And it just so happened to be a short sale, which I get questions about short sales all the time. And there was a CEO twist that came into it as well, right? So why don't you break down a little bit about what went on there?
Sure. So spot on. Thanks for having me on. But it was interesting because the first transaction, it was one of my earliest transactions, probably the first, few in that first year. And it was a relative that I'm super close with, but we were so close that it became a little weird. Weird in the sense like they didn't necessarily want me to necessarily understand all the financials, et cetera. But more importantly, it's a relative that you don't want to let down, right? Because it's somebody and you're close with. And so with this short sale, it was on the market for a really long time. But these clients had said, hey, listen, that's the house for me. Like, I want that house. And to me, and obviously you do this for all your clients, but it's like when your client's like, that's the house we've been searching for, you do everything you can to go get after. And that's what I tried to do for this, and it worked out.
I think, and unfortunately, your client picked a short sale property, which we as agents are always like, damn, it's not what we want to be on.
For sure. And it's always like, you could be in a short sale deal that can be open-ended, right? You could be in it for 6 months, 9 months in contract, and a week before closing, they pull the plug on it for any reason, for business reasons or, whatever. And it's like, great. Now we've invested a lot of time and effort and energy, and we were designing stuff, and now we have to start all over again. So it gets challenging. Understand?
Yeah, totally. I'll let you keep going, and then I can share some of my short sale horror stories on that note.
No, absolutely. And so it was interesting because the agent that was on the other side of the deal on the sell side was in the process of leaving their brokerage, and there was nobody at the brokerage to pick up the slack, the broker or anybody else. So to some extent, I was almost doing both sides of the deal just to kind of keep it moving.
Yeah.
So that was definitely one of the challenges that we had there. The seller was extremely sarcastic, which I find personally I enjoy. But I think what happened was, to some extent, he was able to alienate the brokerage. It pissed off effectively the town officials, so they didn't want to necessarily get involved with the COs and inspections later on, as well as vendors that came in the house. But it was an emotionally trying time for them as well, because they had lived there. Both their children were born in the house. They had been raised through the house. So now they were downsizing. They had to move. They had a lot of sweat equity into it over the years. The client had their home office there. So it was a lot of emotions. So I think the biggest piece of advice that I could get was to see a need, fill a need. It was, hey, we don't have an agent that is on the sell side effectively, right? So how do we make sure that we can not represent both sides, but kind of navigate the transaction well enough? And that included working with the attorneys, who, as a positive for the short sale attorneys, they send leads now. They send me stuff. They referred me out, which is a nice win for me as well.
That's one of those scenarios where you go, kind of above and beyond, and you probably made their lives easier, because like they're not, same with them. There's no compensation on their end unless this actually gets to the finish line as well.
That's right. And getting the referrals was the biggest testament from that, so then I had clients for life, because they tell everybody the story about how difficult it was. And it got to the point where we had to do the CO, the certificate of occupancy. And he wouldn't allow us into the house to have the inspection, and he wouldn't get the paperwork filled out. So it was trying to find creative ways to get that paperwork done, and obviously creative being legal and within boundaries as well, but just being creative, so it was getting.
Excuse me, Mr. Seller, is this you being sarcastic, or are you actually not letting us in the home so you don't get foreclosed on,
Well, with the CO, he agreed to have the vendor come in and do an inspection, and do the testimonial saying that the account had been tested, it was in good standing, et cetera. He shut off service beforehand, right before they even come out. So they couldn't give us that document. And they were all hardwired systems in the house. And it was interesting because I remember the conversation distinctly with the town officials, which was, we've had run-ins with this gentleman before, and it hasn't been a great experience. So nobody was really motivated, and it was developing that relationship with the team there, where they wanted to see us succeed, and they wanted actually to see that transition happen to my clients, which was awesome, because
Right.
it was like a big group effort at the end of the day, and it really did work out.
No, and I feel like so many agents will just kind of let it go at that. And just to kind of like rewind too, I would probably like as people are listening in, essentially, just so everybody's aware, a short sale is when somebody is selling their home for a deficit of what the more. So if they owe 500 on the property and they sell it for 450, the short would be, obviously there's gonna be closing costs and stuff like that too, but the short for simple math would be that $50,000. So you're getting short sale approval. The seller will sign off on the 450. And then you actually have to go get third-party approval to make sure that the bank is okay with taking that loss and writing it off on that property. If the bank feels the home's worth 575, they could say no at the end of a 4, 6, maybe a 12-month process. And that certainly happened to me. I've actually had scenarios where we're in contract at 450 using that same scenario, and then the bank comes back and counters the buyer a year and a half later at like 525. They have a different number. And I've had it where then the buyer says, well, no, I don't want to do that. And then they're like, great. So we're moving on. I've also had other scenarios where we get a short sale approved and then we don't close before the note gets sold off to another investor. And then that new investor comes in and is like, no, I don't approve of that. And you literally start the whole process over only for them to not be able to buy the home. So that's like when people hear about the horrors of short sales, those are some examples. And what Jaison mentioned here too is he had the right attorney. You didn't pick the attorney. That was on the seller side, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
But everybody was working together, and you definitely need the right people involved that specialize in short sales to get that across the finish line. But then, to deal with the CO issues, and did you end up closing with a temporary CO on that, and then the buyer took care of it post closing?
We had to do a temporary CO because they were like, we're not going to give it in the old owner's name, just given some of the challenges. And so, but again, it was just everybody working together, and the ADT, like the inspection for the alarm company, was big for us as well. I mean, we try to get new service activated there. We try to reactivate it. We talked to multiple people within the company, from the local branch office to corporate office, to see who could support us and either reactivate temporarily. Owners were willing to take the buyers were willing to take over the agreement, but it didn't work out for a multitude of reasons. So we got the temp CO. But what was interesting is that even in the days leading up to the deal closing, to your point about the deal being able to fall apart at any time, we got threatened, I guess, by the seller saying, hey, listen, you're going to let me store stuff in this house beyond closing, and we're not going to do it with a legal agreement in place, right? And that, to me, doesn't protect my clients as well. And so it wasn't something that we were comfortable doing. And he was like, I know how to kill this deal, and I will do it. And it was almost like I know how to navigate the system.
Yeah, I would almost say like I know how to make sure you never see your belongings again because I'm closing and there's no agreement. But you wanted to limit it, or you wanted to keep stuff there?
Yeah. It worked out. A lot of it was just kind of relationship building, right? I think that was probably like my biggest takeaway from this, because there were a lot of people that we weren't familiar with on the deal, or we didn't know they were already involved in the deal. It was like, how do you get in and show that you're working towards a greater good? How do we work together? And that team bonding exercise, either between the attorneys on the deal, the town officials, even the seller himself. I mean, like, we ended up having a pretty good rapport. We would joke around and stuff like that. I think his highly sarcastic nature,
right?
Probably, I gravitate towards that. So I liked it personally, but he helped us at the end of the day, and he didn't leave his stuff past closing because we weren't going to allow that to happen without the buyers being protected.
Right.
So it all worked out. I think it was one of my earlier deals again. So to me, it was like a great learning lesson. And every deal has been probably easier because of that one since then.
Yeah, those are the certain deals where it's like you definitely, the amount of work, the amount of hours that go into these things, but also too, like to your point, you have to kind of keep your cool. And I see agents, lenders, attorneys in scenarios like that where they just kind of give up, or they'll blow up on like the seller, or they'll blow up on the scenario, and then you're done. The second somebody like loses their cool, well, that's not true. I feel like there's been scenarios where you and I have to go back in and kind of like talk to another realtor who's upset about something and make sure that they're not even a part of our organization. We're almost like their therapists trying to help them take a deep breath and let's move through the transaction this way, because nobody's going to win if you throw your hissy fit and try to blow a deal up. But
And that's exactly how we did it with the town officials. It was like, listen, I know you have challenges with this property historically, but I'm not that person.
Right.
Like help me help you.
Right.
And they stepped in a big way as well. So all in all, I think that partnership was incredible.
Yeah. And that's that too. Like if it, if a lot of times on the short sale side of things or foreclosure, a lot of times it's the buyer's responsibility as well to deal with the CO issues and to pay for the expenses and stuff like that if it needs. And there's it's not uncommon when somebody is involved in a distressed sale like that you come across violations. Yeah. And a lot of times there are years and years of fines that result in all this, that, and the other thing. And you have to have that conversation with code enforcement at the building department, basically saying, listen, I am the solution to the problem that's been there for 10 years. You don't want the neighbors to continue to call and say, hey, why is there a blue tarp, screwed into the side of that property that's an incredible eyesore to the whole neighborhood. It's like, we are the solution. So knock the fines down, or let us close with a TCO and tell us, hey, we're going to remediate, or we're going to alleviate any of the fines if you remediate the issues within 60 days. Yep. So there's just so everybody who's watching understands that there's like that, there is that, you can play that game. They're not there the town is not the person who's writing the fines, the fine money is not going into their pocket, So it's like, if you schmooze them a little bit and you have that conversation, a lot of times I've seen, $10,000 get knocked down to $1,000. The only place I will say, shout out to Union City. They don't seem to ever have any leeway on any of their fines. I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines on deals where they're just like, no, we're getting paid. We're totally getting paid. It's probably going into, the mayor's pocket. Given that, I'll say that publicly.
Even though that was that one short sale we dealt with that had over $1 million in fines, right?
Yeah. And they were able to get them knocked down. Yeah, quite a bit, but that was a lot of. That's what I mean. That's Union City is notorious. Actually, if anybody ever wants to build in Union City, don't. It's just make sure that you work with people local in regards to get the project done. People get them done, but they don't make it easy. And that's an example. It's like, guys, it wasn't a crack house at the time, but had probably been, had some of the wrong people living in it. And it was boarded up, but never felt great to walk through. And, it was in a pretty public open space. I don't know why a town would want to make that difficult to a developer wanting to come in who would do. The only thing that's going to happen is they're going to build something beautiful there, given that location and stuff. So Union City is one exception.
I don't know how I find all these deals.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. We're talking about Jason's like first horror story, and then somehow that just naturally segued into another horror story, and then I'm sure we could just rap for the next hour about like every deal you've ever done is probably a horror story. Yeah, they follow you around.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say that's not a reflection of my skills as an agent.
No, I mean that was an REO deal. It was a distressed sale. Yeah. That's when you're dealing with that, there's the REOs, the distressed sales, they always come with baggage. So buyers are interested in them because there's an opportunity to purchase the property slightly below retail. But you will certainly, go through, you'll get some battle wounds going through the process of it.
Yeah. Like specifically that place, remember they had like a whole structure built behind it. So it was almost like a house behind the house and none of it legal.
Yeah, it had like a whole legal. It was twice the size of the legal like side of the home, and with literally 50% of the square footage being illegal. And we're talking, probably a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot structure. Like it was between the whole building. So that was an interesting, feeling like I was going to fall off the side of a cliff kind of thing, walking around trying to get into that property, hopping fences and stuff.
It's great when we were like, hey, let's talk about short sales. I'm like, well, let me pick my worst story. I've got multiple.
Oh man, and that was only 2 months into the business. No, so at any rate, guys, if we wanted to just wrap a little bit about sometimes the more difficult transactions that we go through, and we'll start coming back with some more every Friday. But dude, I appreciate you coming on. Any questions, for Jaison, reach out to him direct. What's a good way to get in touch with you? Jaison@sellwithsikora.com. Cool. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it, and keep on keeping on, dude.